The first surgical intervention was performed by Dr. Ernest Heller in 1913, and that's how the treatment procedure bears his name. But it was not actually called eclasia till an article by Dr. Arthur Hurst mentioned the treatment for eclasia of cardia, which was called cardiospasm at that time. And Ellis et al. Described the transthoracic approach first in 1958. That is for the history of this procedure. Now coming to the actual disease, what is eclasia? Eclasia is aperistalsis of the esophageal body with a hypertonic lower esophageal sphincter. And this is usually due to degeneration of the neurons in the esophageal walls, and it is the second most common benign disorder of the esophagus which needs a surgical intervention. And histopathologically, eclasia patients show decrease in the neurons of the myenteric plexus. Now, these neurons normally secrete nitric oxide, which contributes to the lower esophageal sphincter relaxation. So, because there is a decrease in the nitric oxide production, there is a significant increase in the cholinergic secretion because cholinergic neurons are preserved. So, there is increased tone of the lower esophageal sphincter, or the lower esophageal sphincter tone is maintained and there is decreased relaxation. That is how the whole disease process starts, and gradually this leads to aperistalsis in the rest of the esophagus. Now coming to etiopathogenesis, primary eclasia is idiopathic, considered to be idiopathic, but there are few theories where the HLA studies have shown that there are presence of anti-myenteric antibodies. So some propose that it could be an autoimmune disorder. Some have shown an association with chronic herpes zoster or measles, and T-cell evaluation of patients with eclasia has shown to reactivity of the HSV1, which may suggest that eclasia happens when there is HSV1 infection. So there are different theories, but basically it is a idiopathic disorder with all these theories which are now coming into vogue, which may in future we don't know towards what it will progress. Now there is something called secondary eclasia, and secondary eclasia is due to a protozoan infection, Trypanosoma cruzi, which is called Chagas disease, and this organism damages the ganglion cells in the orbit plexus. One more thing, when you are evaluating patients for eclasia, and if the patient is an elderly patient who is complaining of sudden onset of symptoms which are less than 6 months, along with excessive weight loss, and then your endoscopist or you yourself doing your endoscopy are saying that, feeling that there is a difficulty in passing the endoscope beyond the GE junction, then we have to think of a possible GE malignancy which can mimic eclasia. This is called pseudoeclasia. Then eclasia incidence is around 1.6 per 1 lakh population, and so it is a very infrequent disease. So that's why the various modalities of treatment, it is difficult to do a comparison study comparing one modality of treatment to another modality of treatment, and the incidence is equal in men and women and usually occurs in the 20 to 50 years age group. And the most common clinical manifestations of eclasia being dysphagia, usually to food, solid food is more than 90% and to liquids is more than 80%. So this is not seen with the other motility disorders of the esophagus, where dysphagia is there but not so significant to any of the solid or liquid diet. And the other symptoms would be a minimal weight loss, unless it's a improper diagnosed eclasia. Usually the patients will come present of some weight loss, and usually they'll have regurgitation. Mainly it is nocturnal, so patient will come tell you that when they sleep at night, they will be regurgitating frothy fluid, and then retrosternal pain and heartburn can be there, or some patient may feel that there is something stuck in the throat, and with long duration eclasia, they may complain of hiccups.